Namaskar, good afternoon, hello and welcome to all of you and thank you for being with us at our special Law and Constitution Dialogue organized by Team Legally Speaking and NewsX here in the National Capital. It's now time to move swiftly across to our next special session, which is of course on the next gen lawyer politicians. Yes, these days we often see the two professions of law and politics intertwine, and it's quite interesting that our two guests today are from the same party. Normally, we call one of them, and then we have a face-off with a member of the opposite party, but today there'll be a lot of agreement, I think, between the two of you, and no disagreements on the stage. So first, let's begin with you, Mohammed Khan, on why you decided to become a lawyer, and then tell us about how you also entered the political arena while continuing in your legal profession.
Thanks, Uday. That's a very interesting question, and the answer would go something like this. I'm quite an old lawyer now. I'm almost 40. So I've gotten too old to be called the next generation. It is my generation's time now, so to speak.
Well, your leader also is still a young politician, Rahul Gandhi.
True.
So you are also very much young.
True, but in the legal field, of course,
yes.
there are different standards that are applied to people our age. When I decided first to study law, it was, honestly speaking, this was the early 2000s. This was 2002 and 2003, and at that point of time, there were a handful of law schools. There were, I think, 5 national law schools at that time, and not very many of them had actually had graduates come out into the field. Of course, the boom in the legal field had also not taken place. I went to law school because I was very drawn to the subject. Mm-hmm. And after that, when I graduated, I went to work for Amarchand. It was one firm at the time. And then the 2009 campaign was announced, the general elections campaign. And then I volunteered with the Congress party. And during that time, I was very, very fortunate. And I always say, hard work plays an incredible role, of course. But I'm a big believer in predestination as well. So I think it was a lot of right place at the right time. I somehow landed up at the Congress's headquarters. My family is not in politics. I'm a first-generation lawyer and a first-generation member of a political party. And there I happened to meet Mr. Jairam Ramesh. And the Congress won that election, and he asked me to then join him in the ministry. I became his advisor and officer on special duty. When the Congress government went out of power, I came back to practice. And since that time, I have held multiple roles. I've performed multiple roles. As a spokesperson, I am the Additional Advocate General of 2 states now. I'm Adil's colleague, all of these things. So I think, to be honest, you do your best, right? You persevere, you do your best, and you hope for the best. I think for any gaming fans out there, there is a company called Nintendo. Mm-hmm. The name literally means leave luck to God. So I think I'm a big believer in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, and obviously it's working well for you. So you're able to balance out the two. Let's hear about your journey now, Adil. How and when you decided to become a lawyer, and also when your transition into politics also happened along with your legal profession.
Well, good evening, Uday, and thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure, and to be in the delightful company of my very erudite friend Mohammed, what more could I ask? But coming to your question, law was something which always, it's something which I believed is always a medium for emancipation. It's always a medium to bring about change, tangible change. So my, right from my days in school, I always believed that law was my calling. So once I got done with law, I had the opportunity to work in the Punjab Congress as a secretary of their legal department. And that's where the real interface began. Because I realized that, there are people who come to you, people who are not really, how do I put it, people who are not really cognizant about their rights. There's a lack of awareness. And their problems usually are very simplistic. Maybe just a writ petition before the High Court could really simplify issues for them. And that's where I realized that the interface of law and politics is something which is very potent. And if you look at history world over, lawyers have certainly played a very integral role in the evolution of society, whether even in our country, whether it was the drafting of our constitution or even leading the freedom movement. So law in that sense is a very, very powerful medium to bring about social change. And in politics, if you're in government, of course, you can do more for your people, you can do more for your constituents. But the beauty about law is that with that degree and with a genuine desire to persevere and bring about meaningful change, you can actually knock the jaws of the temple of justice, if I may put it metaphorically, and bring about tangible change.
And do you believe also that the two professions intertwine beautifully, perhaps closer than what we perceive?
Well, I personally believe that both these professions complement each other. Being a lawyer certainly helps you in politics and vice versa. I'll give you an example. As a spokesperson and as a lawyer, we're often taught that you have to articulate your position in court in the least possible words and by putting forth a proposition which is comprehensible. Similar to in politics and similar to in the art of public speaking, because when you go to debates, you really have a limited time span and you have to convey and articulate your point. So therefore, this is one part of it. Secondly, I feel as lawyers, we master the art of drafting, and as draftsperson, as somebody who can look ahead, as somebody who can potentially see pitfalls in the future, that certainly helps in legislative business as well.
Let me ask you that, Mohammed, because I'm sure many of the audience members also have that question, that why and how are so many spokespersons of political parties, and here not just Congress, a lot from BJP also, and perhaps from the SP and other parties as well, lawyers, ये प्रवक्ताओं और वकीलों का इतना तालमेल कैसे है? Why do good lawyers make good spokespersons and vice versa?
Some lawyers are indeed very, very good spokespersons. It is a little bit of a function of the fact that they are lawyers. Therefore, they are taught to think critically. Mm-hmm. They're taught to think in silos. They're taught to do research in very specific fashions. I do not think that all spokespersons who are lawyers are good by that definition. I will say that politics attracts a lot of people who belong to the legal profession, and it has always been so. It has been so since the time of George Washington, because of the flexibility that lawyers enjoy. We control our schedules, right? As litigating lawyers, we decide what we do with our evenings. We can push our conferences, we can push our research proposals, etc. And that gives you a great degree of freedom as a political actor, right? Also, the big benefit of law, if you're running your own practice, is that you have a multiplicity of clients, so you're not tied to one client, right? So if one client, say, for example, disagrees with your political views and leaves, then there are others who will come in his place or her place, etc. The point I'm trying to make is lawyers, especially practicing lawyers, have a great degree of flexibility, both vis-a-vis their schedules and their profession. Therefore, automatically, they have time to perform political roles. But having said that, there's a big mistake we made that, oh, great lawyers make great politicians. That is not entirely true. Some of the best politicians I know are economists, or are people who belong to fields such as, to the more social science fields, etc. They have a fine understanding of the impact of, say, agrarian schemes. Now, for example...
Are you referring to Mr. Jairam Ramesh as well?
Well, of course,
yes.
Absolutely, 100%. When I said economist, yes, he is undoubtedly the smartest person I've ever met in my life. The way he processes data, analyzes data, and then thinks about how to use that data to make better policies is a very unique ability that he has. But because, see, we have a confirmation bias. Your audience here would primarily be young law students. We are lawyers. So we are essentially telling you that, yes, being a lawyer and being a politician are two great things that go hand in hand. They do. There is a great amount of synergy, but that synergy is born out of A, running your own practice, and B, having the ideological flexibility to work.
Also, but let me ask you about the Congress party, because the Congress party has, interestingly, the top legal eagles. The BJP also would argue that, the late Mr. Arun Jaitley, Ravi Shankar Prasadji, of course, but from the Congress, you have a battery of them. How come? How has that happened? From Kapil Sibal, who of course was with you, now he's resigned, to Mr. Chidambaram, to Mr. Tankha, Mr. Khurshid, Dr. Singhvi, to of course, young ones like you as well, and other.
We are very privileged that we have a stable of very senior, very accomplished senior advocates. I would say that would primarily be because of a first mover advantage. I think the Congress, originally because it's an older party, etc., it has these generationally skilled councils who are very, very skilled, but of course they belong to dynasties, so to speak. The BJP as well has its own roster of very, very capable lawyers, and in fact, I have seen some of them. I've seen some of them argue, I've seen some of them do research. I think insofar as the one-sided nature of the roster, that the Congress has at this moment a larger roster of seniors, I think that's one of those things that will sort of equalize with time.
Okay. Adil, in your opinion, what are the characteristics of a good lawyer, according to you? Because, there, again, as Mohammed said, our audience does have a lot of young budding law students. They're more watching us on television and, on our digital platforms live as well right now. What are the characteristics of a good lawyer, according to you? And also, what are the characteristics of a good public servant?
Well, I think it's a combination of ingredients. Certainly your articulation, certainly your ability to grasp facts, your ability to simplify complex propositions of law, a very, very high degree of perseverance, and I think most importantly, law as well as politics requires earnestness. You have to be true to your client, you have to be true to your belief, and you have to be true to the interests of the persons you seek to propound. I think that is something which is non-negotiable. And sooner than later, especially in the legal profession, if there is something dodgy or if you try to be too clever by half, sooner than later it does come to the surface. It can't remain hidden. So it's a combination of factors. And coming to, as public servants, you said, somebody who's holding public office, I think the same qualities would extend there as well. Apart from the fact that you have to be accessible to your people, you have to have a genuine desire to translate their aspirations into policy and into tangible dividends. Earnestness, determination, not compromising with your ideology. I think these are the factors which are necessary in the pursuit of law as well as public life.
Would you like to also respond?
No, I agree with Adil.
Yeah.
I agree with Adil. It is, he's absolutely right. In this regard, I always believe that the practice of law is a very merit-oriented profession. When you young people join the profession, etc., at that particular point of time, you feel that, oh, X has it better than me, or Y has it better than me, or Z has a head start. This profession is a great equalizer. If you have the ability and you have the talent and you're willing to put in the hours, then this is one of those rare professions where you will inevitably rise. It is almost a given. It doesn't matter what your parents did, it doesn't matter which law school you're from. If you are, and especially if you build a name for yourself in a particular area of law, suppose you are brilliant at arbitration, you're brilliant at criminal law, you're brilliant at tax, your name will eventually start to do the rounds. You will emerge, and that is the story of several senior advocates in the current batch who have just become senior advocates over the last 2-3 years. These are people who have not come from dynasties. These are all first-generation lawyers, and they have made a name for themselves because they A, stuck around, and B, became very good at what they do.
Let's also talk about now how a background in law can help legislators. Because, we've spoken about how it helps spokespersons and, people who come on television and also address press conferences. Let's talk about, because, the primary job of a legislator, be it an MP or an MLA, is legislation, making laws, amending laws. How can a background in law help an MP or an MLA?
देखिए हमारे सिस्टम की एक ये खूबसूरती है कि अगर आपको कानून नहीं भी आता तो आप जो है once you have your basic principles in mind, suppose you say I want to make a criminal law and it must address these 10 points, you do it in your language, you do it in your fashion. The Law Ministry of India has 2 departments, legislative and legal affairs. One vets it for language, one vets it for constitutionality and conflict with other laws. So the beauty of our system is it doesn't handicap you if you're not a lawyer. It would be horrible if it was the case. However, being a lawyer, of course, when you're drafting a legislation, you are aware of other laws on the subject, so you start with a bonus there. You're aware of the form and substance it must take. You're aware of the language. You're aware of judgments on the issue. You definitely start from pole position, but it doesn't necessarily give you that sensitivity or expert domain knowledge. वो संवेदनशीलता जैसे कहते हैं वो जो होती है, that I think comes with age and experience, and I don't think that's limited to law alone. Yes, being law is like being a lawyer and approaching a draft of a law is like being a handy tradesman. Yeah. You know how to do it. Yeah. But there is something to be said for larger experience. That is why we have the pre-legislative consultation policy. So in 2014, the government of India enacted something called the pre-legislative consultation policy. They said even if you make a law, you go out and carry out the broadest possible consultation with the widest spectrum of stakeholders. They understood that lawyers by themselves are not enough, and they must consult, they must listen to as many voices as possible. So that's why the answer to your question in one line is, it does help as a lawyer to be a draftsman, but it doesn't necessarily give you a unique insight into drafting a law.
Okay. Adil, why don't you take that? Because, does being a lawyer, politician, being a legal expert help while framing laws, while amending laws, while legislating in parliament and in legislative assemblies?
Well, most certainly it does, because when you are in the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, or for that matter, even in the assembly, you have to see that the laws which you propose or the laws which you seek to draft are in conformity with the constitution. And as lawyers who move into politics, I feel you're in a much, much better position to make that analysis and to ensure that they're in sync and not in violation with any law. That's point number one. Point number two, in policy making, being a lawyer and being a legislator, if you are able to firstly come to, well, this is the outcome which I seek to achieve, I think you're in a better position to meander through and ensure that your legislative policy can be achieved in a certain manner without becoming an affront to any provision which perhaps may bring it down. So therefore, most certainly, I think it helps, and you are in a better position to crunch data, you're in a better position to analyze, see forward. You know, something which we lawyers, of course, other professions also, gain this through experience. But I feel as lawyers, you are in a better position to see what may arise in the future, pitfalls which may arise. For example, I'll give you an example. Let's take the case of the proposed amendment to the IPC. As lawyers, I'm sure Mohammed and I can see that there are certain amendments which will run affront to Article 21, which could potentially impair your rights as a free society. So I think you're in a better position to make that assessment.
Okay, now let's ask you, because I'm sure there are many young budding lawyers and they will look up to you both as well and take your advice today. But, who are one or two lawyer politicians who you've looked up to as a young budding lawyer politician yourself?
Well, for me, I've always looked up to my mentor, Khurshid Sahab. I think he's a very fine human being with an immaculate sense of discerning constitutional provisions and articulating his point in a manner which is pleasing, in a manner which is assertive yet not being aggressive. That's one. And even Dr. Singhvi, for that matter. I think he's a very, very fine institution when it comes to law, and it is always a delight to work with him and to just see that how well he grasps complex questions of constitutional legal matters.
Mohammed?
I echo Adil's sentiments. Khurshid Sahab is also one of my mentors, someone I look up to immensely. He is one of the most large-hearted counsels. He's one of the wisest counsels. He's able to put things in perspective. He has won the respect of the court on multiple occasions. And that's why the court calls upon him. That is the biggest compliment you can pay someone, when the court calls upon you to be an amicus. Dr. Singhvi, for his incredible ability to work hard. You feel, especially when you're in your 20s or 30s, that you'll get to a certain stage and you'll slow down. I have not, in the last decade, seen Dr. Singhvi slow down at all. He works as hard, I often say this, he works as hard as if he set up his practice yesterday and he has no clients. So he is the most hardworking lawyer I've seen. Yes. And that is a big reason for his success. I really look up to him for that. I look up to Randeep sir. I feel the legal profession really lost a very capable practicing lawyer.
Randeep
Surjewala ji. He is someone who we are both very fond of. His ability to read a statute and to catch things in that statute is something that comes with years of practice usually. And Mr. Surjewala was a very promising young lawyer when he started practicing, but of course he was called to greater things. He became a minister at a very young age, and now he's a major leader at the national stage. I also look up enormously to I used to look up, now he has passed, Mr. Arun Jaitley. Mr. Jaitley was also very large-hearted, very, very large-hearted, and he was not arrogant. You know, he enjoyed talking to young lawyers. He enjoyed talking to young lawyers, old lawyers, etc. He enjoyed the company of people. And I think he learned a lot from them as a result. I worked with him very briefly as a law student, but when I was an OSD, and when we were drafting various laws, we would make it a point, and we've written about this in our book as well. We would make it a point, though we were in government, to go to Mr. Jaitley and seek his advice on the laws. Okay, sir, what amendments should we make before they came on the floor of Parliament? And Mr. Jaitley acknowledged this on the floor of Parliament in his speech as well. So he was definitely one of the best lawyers I used to look up to. Yeah, so that answers your question.
Great. Well, I hope you're also both mentoring young lawyers now, so that perhaps 10 or 15 years down the line, they can also be speaking highly of both of you. I'll end by asking you two about what the future is for you personally, and also for lawyer politicians in general. Do you see the two professions intertwining further, or do you believe that there is a new wave sort of sweeping the nation right now?
Well, I certainly feel that lawyers and politicians, this generation will belong to lawyers and politicians. So to all those young lawyers, I think persevere, focus on your profession, and see this as a medium to bring about social change. See this as a medium to uplift the life of people. There may be clients who may not be able to pay you much. There may be clients, don't ever hesitate to do something pro bono. It all adds up in the final calculus. And it's a beautiful profession. And slowly and gradually this profession, you'll realize, is very, very rewarding. So best of luck to all of you.
And where do you see yourself?
Well, certainly law is my primary vocation, but let's see where life takes me.
Okay.
I would echo, I would reiterate what Adil said. Of course, you must work hard. That goes without saying. You must be guided by your conscience. That also is a very important thing. We tend to forget that sometimes you will feel that you're required to make compromises, but if you hold out, then it is indeed infinitely more rewarding. What I'm trying to say is listen to your conscience in these matters. There is a line that is attributed to Superman, the comic Superman in the 90s. He used to say, there is right and there is wrong, and you can always tell the difference. We jump through, we do a lot of these mental gymnastics to try and justify taking course A or doing course B. But as Superman said, there's right and there's wrong, and it's easy to tell the difference. There, I think lawyers make a huge difference. Side with causes, whether they're popular or unpopular. Side with clients, whether they're popular or unpopular, based on what you feel is the merit of the matter and where your conscience takes you. Insofar as where I see myself in 5 years, I began by saying it, I'll say it again, Nintendo, leave luck to God, yeah.
Okay. Thank you both so much for speaking with us today. And lawyer politicians, very important for each party, be it battling criminal cases of leaders, to of course framing laws, as the two of them said, to also addressing those press conferences and TV debates. They do play a crucial role for each political party. Thank you both, Mohammed and Adil, for joining us today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.